Today, on the Prior Transformation, we're talking about automation, self-driving cars and the robots and the like. Is there something we haven't thought about? There probably is. Let's explore. Welcome to the Prior Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Smoots. In this podcast, we explore, actually, there's no we, it's just I. I'm the only person here. And really, I just ramble for 2 or 3 minutes on a technology or business topic. And occasionally, I'll interview some smart folks. If you like that kind of thing, enjoy. So there's something I've been thinking about recently, and it has to do with automation and AI. And this whole train of thought actually came from an Uber driver, oddly enough. I got in this guy's car and we started driving. And we started asking, he asked me what I do. And I talked about, software engineer, yada, yada. He was like, oh, that's interesting. You probably do some cool stuff. And I was like, I've talked about blockchain and all those kind of things. And then AI came up and he said, AI is really interesting, specifically self-driving cars, but that would never work where I come from. And I was interested. I was in the backseat, kind of fumbling through my phone, typical thing. And when he said that, it kind of stopped me, and I was like, interesting. What do you mean? I asked him, and he said, well, I live in South Central, and when the self-driving cars show up, the criminals are going to be an issue. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it's because the criminals are going to stand in the middle of the street and stop cars and stop traffic and then rob the passengers because the car's not going to be smart enough to drive away, which is interesting. So then the big question there is, how do you develop AI so that it's smart enough to keep somebody safe, and smart enough to keep the passenger safe? I guess that's the best way to think about it. How does it keep the passenger safe, and then how does it keep other people safe, and then how do you balance those two things? And if you kind of think about it in the current world of driving, that's kind of balanced out by a person and sitting in the car driving and the person caring about their family and their well-being, and at the point where say a robber or criminal comes up and tries to stand in front of the car. If that person really feels like they're going to be scared, or if the person really feels scared or feels threatened, they're just going to mash the gas and either hit the person or drive off or do some kind of evasive driving, whatever it may be, because they kind of have to. There's like a fight or flight because there's two individuals that are acting independently in that system. Whereas with the AI, it's kind of like, how does that function get optimized? Are you optimizing for the driver's safety? Or are you optimizing for the people on the street's safety? And then how does that balance in that scenario? And you can kind of think about how that would play out in other things, like, besides just cars. Could be anything, related to, I think the canonical example is in the iRobot movie with Will Smith, where, the robot, is trying to save Will Smith I think his son, or there was a kid in the car or something, and there was an accident. He was in the water. The car was in the water. The robot jumps in, and rather than saving the kid, the robot saves the adult, who's Will Smith's character, because the robot made a calculation and found out that realistically the kid had like a 1% or 2% chance of surviving or whatever. So it optimized to save one person over the other, which is interesting. And it kind of takes that human element out. So that's something that we got to kind of think about. At least the way that the AI is structured now is you have these optimization, these functions that AI optimizes for, and that kind of thing can be an issue if we don't really think about those optimizations and that function. So. Another great example is the paperclip problem. We create an AI whose responsibility is to make paperclips and make it most optimal. And the AI determines that the most optimal way of making paperclips is to destroy the planet and turn it into a massive paperclip factory or something like that. That kind of thing, is always kind of the funny kind of example in AI. And it's something I read in the I think it was Nick Bostrom book. Superintelligence. But that's something to think about. I think we should be thinking more about that. So that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed it.